Have you ever met someone who changed your life forever, without even knowing it? In the middle of a cold, rainy night, a homeless boy wandered the empty streets, stomach growling, shoes torn, heart heavy, but his soul was pure. He had nothing to give, and yet gave everything. That night, he found a woman trembling in pain, alone and pregnant, her car broken down on the edge of nowhere. He had no idea who she was, and she had no idea that this little boy's kindness would change everything forever. What followed was a story of love, loss, redemption, and a twist no one saw coming. The rain was relentless that night, pounding against the concrete like drums of sorrow. Puddles gathered in potholes, and the air was thick with the scent of wet asphalt. A boy, no older than 10, trudged through the downpour wearing a hoodie too thin for the weather. His name was Jalen. Jalen had lived on the streets for over a year now, ever since his mother passed away and the system failed him. He carried a small backpack with everything he owned, an old pair of socks, a worn-out Bible, and a crumpled photo of his mother smiling beside him at a church picnic. He was used to hunger, to sleeping in cardboard boxes, and to being invisible. But he wasn't bitter. Jalen still believed that one day, God would give him a sign, something that would show him his life meant something. But he never expected that sign to come in the form of a stranded woman at the edge of a deserted highway. Billionaire? He couldn't believe it. That woman in pain, stranded and scared. She was the wife of one of the richest men in the country, and she had trusted him. Jalen didn't know that night was just the beginning of a journey that would unravel hidden truths, bring him face to face with powerful enemies, and test his kindness in ways he never imagined. But most of all, it would change his life forever. Stay tuned for part 2, where fate begins to unfold, and Jalen discovers that saving a life sometimes means stepping into a world you were never meant to see. Comment below. Would you have stopped to help if you were Jalen? Or would fear have made you walk away? Let us know what you would have done, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for part 2 coming soon. The next morning, sunlight broke through the clouds, casting golden rays across the city. The rain had washed the streets clean, but Jalen's world remained the same, cold and uncertain. He sat on the stone steps of the church, his damp hoodie wrapped tightly around him, wondering what had become of the woman he'd helped. Pastor Greg brought him a warm cup of cocoa and some toast. "You've been quiet this morning," he said gently, sitting beside the boy. Jalen nodded. "Do you think she's okay?" "I do," Pastor Greg replied with a small smile. "And I think she won't forget what you did for her." Jalen looked down, unsure how to feel. For once, someone had seen him, not as a homeless kid, not as a statistic, but as a person. And that meant something. Still, he had no idea what was coming next. Her SUV was parked oddly under a flickering street lamp, steam rising from the hood. The windshield wipers were stuck, and the door was cracked open slightly. Inside, a woman sat hunched over the steering wheel, trembling. Jalen paused, squinting through the rain. Something about the way she clutched her belly told him she wasn't just in car trouble. He walked closer, cautiously. "Ma'am, are you okay?" The woman jolted at the sound of his voice. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with fear and pain. She looked to be in her late 20s, her coat soaked and her hair matted against her forehead. Her left hand was pressed against her stomach, fingers twitching in distress. I think I'm having contractions," she whispered, breathless. "My phone died. I was trying to get to the hospital." Jalen's heart raced. He didn't know much about childbirth, but he knew pain when he saw it, and this woman was in trouble. "Hold on," he said, voice steady despite the panic rising inside him. "I'll help you. I promise." She blinked at him in disbelief. A child, soaking wet, with holes in his shoes, was offering her help when everyone else had passed her by. "What's your name?" she asked, voice trembling.
Jalen.
"And you?" She hesitated. "Claire." Jalen opened her door wider and helped support her as she stepped out. She winced with every movement. "There's a church down that road," he said, pointing to a narrow alleyway barely lit. "They let me sleep in the back, sometimes. It's dry and warm. I can take you there." Claire could barely walk, but with Jalen's help, they made slow progress. He wrapped his arms around her to keep her balanced, his tiny frame holding up her weight with surprising strength. As they walked, the storm raged louder. Thunder cracked like gunshots, and Jalen had to squint against the wind. He kept whispering, "It's okay." Just a little further, like a mantra. When they finally reached the church, Jalen knocked on the back door. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. Finally, an old man named Pastor Greg opened the door, his eyes widening at the sight of the soaked, pregnant woman clinging to the boy's arm. "Lord have mercy," he whispered. "Come in quickly." Inside, the warmth was overwhelming. Claire was laid on a bench, wrapped in blankets. Pastor Greg rushed to call an ambulance while Jalen knelt beside her, holding her hand. "You didn't leave me," she whispered, tears blending with the rain on her cheeks. "I wouldn't do that," Jalen said simply. "You needed help." Claire smiled through the pain. "You're a good boy." Sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. Claire's body shook as another contraction hit, and Jalen gripped her hand tighter. "You're gonna be okay," he promised. "They're almost here." The medics arrived moments later, storming in with urgency. Claire was whisked onto a stretcher, but before they rolled her away, she turned her head and met Jalen's eyes one more time. "Thank you," she whispered. "You saved my life." He smiled softly, and then she was gone, the red and blue lights flashing as the ambulance disappeared into the night. Jalen stood outside, drenched again, his small chest rising and falling with deep breaths. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle. He looked up at the sky and whispered, "Was that the sign, Mama?" Pastor Greg came outside and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "That was brave, Jalen. Not many people would do what you did." Jalen shrugged. "She needed help. That's what my mama would have done." The pastor gave him a long look. "You know, the Lord works in mysterious ways. That woman, she's not just anybody." Jalen tilted his head. "She's Claire Delaney," Pastor Greg said. "Wife of Jonathan Delaney, the billionaire." Jalen froze. Claire Delaney lay in a private hospital room, sunlight filtering in through the tall windows. Her face was pale, her hair brushed back, and her hands rested gently on her belly. The baby was fine, the doctor had said, just a scare. But she couldn't stop thinking about the boy. Jalen. He had risked so much for her, without even knowing her name. She remembered his shivering arms around her, the way he kept whispering, "You're gonna be okay," like he truly believed it. It had been years since someone had shown her such selfless kindness. Jonathan Delaney entered the room like a storm, polished shoes clicking against the floor, a phone in one hand, worry carved into his face. "Claire," he exclaimed, rushing to her side. "I came as soon as I heard what happened." She tried to smile. "I was on my way to the hospital when the car broke down. My phone died. I panicked." "You should have called the driver. Why didn't you take security?" he scolded, then softened his tone. "You and the baby are all that matter to me." Claire nodded, but her mind wandered back to Jalen. "A boy helped me," she said quietly. "A child. Homeless. Maybe 10 years old. He found me in the storm and walked me to a church." Jonathan's brows furrowed. "A child? Alone." "He saved me," Claire said. "I want to find him." Jonathan hesitated. "Claire, are you sure he wasn't trying to scam you?" She looked at him sharply. "No. He didn't ask for anything. He gave me warmth, support, comfort, when I needed it most. We have to find him, Jonathan. He's out there alone." The billionaire stared at his wife, a strange flicker of emotion in his eyes, one he didn't show often. Then he nodded. "All right. I'll put out a search." But Jalen had no idea a billionaire was now looking for him. Later that afternoon, Jalen returned to his usual spot near the subway station. That was where he panhandled during the day. He didn't like begging, but it was better than stealing. Some days, he collected enough to buy a sandwich. Other days, just enough for a bottle of water. Today, though, people passed him by like he was a ghost. He sat with his knees hugged to his chest, the city noise roaring around him. But then, A sleek black car rolled to a stop just a few feet away. Jalen looked up, confused. No one ever stopped here for a kid like him. The back window rolled down slowly, and a tall man in a navy blue suit stepped out. Sunglasses hid his eyes, but his voice was firm. "Are you Jalen?" the man asked. Jalen's heart skipped. "Who's asking?" "I'm Mr. Carter," he said, removing his shades. "I work for the Delaney family. Claire Delaney asked us to find you." Jalen froze. "She's okay," he whispered. Mr. Carter nodded. "She's more than okay. She wants to see you." Jalen looked around as if unsure whether he was dreaming. "Why?" "She says you saved her life. And Mr. Delaney would like to thank you, personally." For a moment, Jalen wanted to run. Things like this didn't happen to kids like him. But something inside told him to say yes. "Okay," he whispered. The car door opened, and Jalen climbed in, heart racing. For the first time in a long time, he sat on something soft and warm. Leather seats, a fresh scent, safety. The car drove through neighborhoods he'd never even seen before, places with fountains in front yards, and people who wore gold watches just to walk their dogs. Finally, they stopped at the iron gates of the Delaney estate. Jalen's mouth fell open. The mansion looked like a palace, 3 stories tall, with white marble pillars, sprawling gardens, and windows that stretched to the sky. Mr. Carter guided him to the entrance, where a maid opened the door with a polite nod. "He's expected." Jalen stepped inside. Everything sparkled. The chandelier above him looked like it could buy a whole city block. He felt so small, so out of place. He almost turned back. But then he heard her voice. "Jalen." He looked up. Claire stood at the top of the grand staircase, wearing a soft blue robe, her eyes warm and full of gratitude. She came down the steps slowly, ignoring the surprised glances from the staff. Jalen shifted nervously. "You're okay?" Claire knelt in front of him and took his small hands in hers. "Because of you." He swallowed hard. "You saved me," she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. "I don't even know how to thank you." Jalen shrugged. "You don't have to." Claire smiled. "But I want to." "Would you like to stay for dinner? We've got spaghetti, mashed potatoes, and warm cookies." Jalen's eyes widened. "All of that?" She nodded. "All of it. And you can sleep here tonight if you want. We have guest rooms." Jalen hesitated. "I'm not used to beds." Claire's smile softened. "That's okay. We'll take it slow. Just stay. Just for tonight." Jalen looked around one last time, then nodded. And that night, for the first time in over a year, he slept in a warm bed, under a roof, with full stomach. And safe dreams. Not everyone was happy about Claire's interest in a homeless boy. From a dark corner of the estate, an older man in a tailored suit observed Jalen with narrowed eyes. Jonathan Delaney's brother, Richard Delaney, was a man of ambition and secrets. And he didn't like the idea of a street kid getting too close to the family. He made a phone call, his voice cold. "Find out everything about that boy. Where he came from. Who he really is. I want dirt, and I want it fast." Because Richard knew something Claire and Jonathan didn't. Jalen's presence wasn't just a miracle. It was a threat. And in the coming days, the truth would shatter everything. Jalen's one act of kindness brought him into the heart of a world he never imagined, filled with riches, secrets, and danger. But sometimes, even angels walk in disguise, and sometimes, the smallest hands carry the heaviest destinies. Comment below. Do you think Jalen's life is about to change for better or worse? Let us know your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe. Part 3 will reveal secrets even Jalen never saw coming. Jalen woke up to the scent of pancakes and warm syrup. For a moment, he didn't open his eyes. The blanket wrapped around him was thick and soft. The pillow beneath his head was like a cloud. It didn't feel real. He was used to waking up on stone steps, cardboard pallets, or shelter floors. But this was different. He sat up slowly and looked around the elegant guest room. White drapes, a plush armchair by the window, and a golden-framed painting of a little boy holding a red balloon. Everything gleamed. A knock on the door startled him. It opened slowly. Claire stepped in, her smile warm and motherly. "Morning, Jalen. I hope you slept okay?" He nodded. "I didn't move all night. Think I forgot how beds work." She chuckled gently and walked to the side of the bed. "There's breakfast waiting downstairs. After that, I'd like to show you something." Downstairs, the dining room was a dream. A long glass table, silver cutlery, pitchers of fresh juice, and more food than Jalen had seen in a week. Pancakes, scrambled eggs, fruits he didn't even know the names of. He hesitated, unsure where to sit. But Claire pulled a chair for him, like he belonged. "You can have anything you want," she said kindly. Jalen's eyes filled with wonder as he ate. "It's good," he mumbled through a mouthful of eggs. "Really good." She watched him with quiet admiration. There was a light in this child, resilience wrapped in humility. Something rare. Something powerful. "Jalen," she said after a while, "do you remember your family? Where you came from?" He paused mid-bite. "Not really. My mom, she got sick. Then one day, she didn't wake up. I ended up in a foster home. Then another. Then the streets." Claire's eyes welled up. "Do you know your last name?" He shook his head slowly. "Just Jalen. That's all I remember." Later that day, Claire led Jalen down a long hallway lined with family portraits. She paused at one of them, a large oil painting of a boy around 5 years old, dressed in a navy sweater, standing beside a woman who bore a striking resemblance to Claire. The boy had deep brown eyes, curly hair, and a small scar above his right eyebrow. Jalen stared at it, frozen. Claire watched him. "You okay?" I know that kid," he said, his voice barely a whisper. Claire's heart began to race. "What do you mean?" He pointed to the scar. "I have that too. I got it when I fell off a fire escape trying to chase a cat. That's me." Claire's knees almost buckled. "Jalen." But before she could speak further, Jonathan stepped into the hallway. "What's going on here?" he asked, noticing the look on their faces. Claire turned to him slowly, her voice trembling. "Jonathan, we need to talk. Now." In the drawing room, the air was thick with tension. Jalen sat quietly as Claire stood in front of her husband, eyes wide with revelation. "That painting, Jonathan. It's him. It's Jalen." Jonathan looked confused. "What are you saying?" "I painted it 10 years ago," she said. Back when I thought I was going to lose him." Jonathan's face went pale. "Claire, you miscarried." She shook her head, tears brimming. "That's what the hospital told me. But I knew. I felt him. He was alive. They said he was gone, but they never let me hold him. And then I was sedated for hours." Jonathan looked shaken. "You think they took him?" Claire turned to Jalen. "The scar. The eyes. The story. He's not just any boy. He's our son." Jalen blinked in shock. "What? No, that can't be." Jonathan stepped back, voice rising. "This is insane. Claire, think about what you're saying." But Claire was already pulling out an old photo album, flipping to a baby picture. She placed it beside Jalen's face. Even Jonathan couldn't deny it anymore. The resemblance was haunting. Richard Delaney watched the live camera feed, his jaw tight. "She found him," he muttered. "She actually found him." He lit a cigarette, pacing. "I told them to take care of that kid. Years ago." His assistant glanced at him. "You mean?" "Yes." "He was never supposed to live," Richard hissed. "He was a threat to the inheritance. If the child survived, everything would go to Claire's side. Not me. Not my shares. So I paid the nurse. She said she'd handle it. But somehow," he growled, "the kid got away." Now the boy was back. In the house. Living, breathing, smiling. If Claire and Jonathan accepted him, Richard's control over the family fortune would vanish. And Richard Delaney did not like to lose. Back in the guest room, Jalen sat alone, hands trembling. "Is it true?" he whispered to himself. "Could they really be my parents?" He looked around at the expensive furnishings, the paintings, the gentle scent of lavender. It was a world so different from the one he knew. And yet, something about it felt strangely familiar. A knock came on the door. It was Claire, eyes red but smiling. "Sweetheart," she said softly. "Can I come in?" He nodded. She knelt beside him, her hands gently holding his. "I know it's a lot. I don't want to scare you. But in my heart, I always knew you were out there." "I don't remember much," Jalen admitted. "But sometimes, when I slept on the sidewalk, I used to dream about a woman singing to me. Her voice sounded like yours." Claire let the tears fall freely then. "Jalen, I never stopped loving you, even when I thought you were gone." He looked at her, heart racing. "So what now?" She smiled through her tears. "If you want, we can take a test. A DNA test, just to be sure." Jalen nodded slowly. "Okay." Claire pulled him into a gentle hug. "No matter what the results say, you will always have a place here." While the mansion slept, Richard Delaney made a call. "Plan B," he said into the phone. "Get rid of the kid. Tonight." The voice on the other end was cold. "Understood." But Richard didn't know something important. Jalen wasn't just a scared, homeless boy anymore. He had a mother now. And if anyone tried to hurt him again, Claire Delaney would burn the world down to protect him. Jalen's past begins to unravel with stunning revelations and chilling shadows lurking in the background. A billionaire's hidden heir, a family's betrayal, and a storm from the past. Will truth bring healing or danger? What do you think Richard will do next? Comment below, and make sure to subscribe to catch part 4, where secrets turn deadly and the bond between mother and son faces its biggest test yet. The rain beat hard against the windows that night. Inside the mansion, all was still, at least on the surface. But beneath the calm, tension brewed like a storm waiting to explode. Jalen sat in his room staring out at the night sky. He had never seen lightning from a safe place before. Usually, he watched it huddled under cardboard or a bridge. But now he was warm, clothed, fed, and for the first time in years, he didn't feel invisible. Yet, something felt off. A creeping coldness in the air. A strange tapping sound from the hallway. An instinct that had kept him alive on the streets whispered to him now, danger is close. Meanwhile, Claire was in the study with Jonathan, reviewing documents. Her hands trembled as she stared at Jalen's childhood photos from the shelter records they had managed to retrieve that evening. "All the timelines match," she whispered. "The age, the scar, even the blanket he was found with. It was hand-stitched with the initials CD. Claire Delaney. My mother gave it to me." Jonathan sat in stunned silence. The evidence was undeniable. That little boy they were told had died was alive, and he had saved Claire when she needed help most. "I don't know what kind of game fate is playing," Jonathan said, voice tight. "But I believe you now. Jalen's ours." Claire nodded, but her joy was tempered by fear. "There's something else. I think someone tried to hide him. To erase him." She didn't say the name, but they both knew who she meant. Richard Delaney. The hired man slipped in through the service door, dressed in black, his boots silent against the marble floors. He knew the layout well. He'd worked for Richard before. Quick jobs. Dirty jobs. And this was no different. "Just scare the boy," Richard had said. "Rattle him. Make him disappear." But men like that never stop at scare tactics. Jalen jolted up from bed when he heard the creak of a door downstairs. Not a usual creak. This one had purpose. Movement. He slipped out of bed quietly, heart racing. Instinct took over. He tiptoed down the hallway barefoot, pressing his back to the wall as he peered around the corner. A dark figure moved in the foyer. Jalen's breath caught. He didn't scream. He didn't panic. He backed away slowly, stepping into the hallway closet and closing the door softly behind him. From the narrow slits in the wood, he could see the intruder heading toward the staircase, toward his room. Jalen clenched his fists, thinking fast. Claire and Jonathan were still in the study when the power flickered, then went out entirely. Darkness swallowed the room. "Jonathan." Claire whispered. "I've got a flashlight," he replied, grabbing one from the drawer. Just as he flicked it on, they heard it. A crash. Glass shattering upstairs. And then a scream. "Jalen!" Claire shouted, bolting toward the door. The intruder had realized the boy wasn't in bed. He smashed a vase in frustration, scanning the hallway. His flashlight's beam darted back and forth, and then a noise. A shuffle from the closet. Jalen's heartbeat thundered in his chest. The closet door flung open and he kicked. A hard, desperate kick, straight to the man's knee. The intruder grunted in pain, but lunged forward. Jalen ducked and ran. His small frame gave him the advantage. He dashed through the corridor like a shadow, leading the man away from the guest rooms and toward the back stairs. But just as he rounded the corner, he slipped on the marble floor. The man caught him. Jalen screamed. Suddenly, let him go. Claire's voice rang through the hall. She stood there, panting, flashlight in one hand, revolver in the other, shaking but firm. The man didn't move. I said drop him. He hesitated. Jonathan arrived behind her, breathless, phone in hand. Cops are on the way. The man snarled and shoved Jalen to the side before bolting down the corridor. He vanished through the back exit seconds before security arrived. Claire dropped to her knees, pulling Jalen into her arms. Are you hurt? Baby, are you okay? He nodded, clinging to her. I'm okay. I knew something was wrong. Jonathan knelt beside them, voice low but fierce. This wasn't random. Someone sent him. Claire's eyes darkened. Richard. The police came quickly. So, did the private investigators Jonathan quietly hired after the attack. Within 24 hours, a trail was found, payment transfers, burner phones, and a clear link to Richard Delaney. When confronted, Richard denied everything. You think I'd hurt a child? He spat. That's madness. But his cold eyes gave him away. You tried to erase my son, Claire said, voice like ice. And now you tried again. You're finished. Jonathan had lawyers draw up the papers. By the end of the day, Richard was removed from the board, stripped of power. Justice had begun, but the scars would remain. Jalen sat on the back porch with Claire, wrapped in a thick blanket. The rain had stopped. The stars peeked out, shy but steady. Claire held a cup of cocoa in her hands. You were brave today. Braver than any adult I know. Jalen smiled faintly. I used to be scared every night. But I learned something. What's that? He looked at her, eyes deep with quiet strength. Sometimes, people who've been hurt the most know how to protect others best. Claire's throat tightened. She reached for his hand. You're not alone anymore, Jalen. You never will be again. He leaned against her shoulder, and for the first time in a long time he felt safe. A woman watched the news coverage from a small, dimly lit apartment. Jalen's photo was on the screen. She dropped her glass. No, she whispered, backing away from the screen. Jalen? Tears flooded her eyes. He's alive. She fumbled for her phone. Her fingers trembled as she dialed the number she hadn't called in over a decade. I need to speak to Claire Delaney, she told the assistant who answered. Tell her, I know the truth. About her son. About everything. A shadow has lifted, but an old face is about to return. Who is the woman watching the news? And what does she know about Jalen's past? Would you risk everything to uncover the truth? Leave your thoughts below, and don't miss part 5, where the past returns and the story comes full circle. The morning light felt different. Not just because of the rain that had passed or the storm that had settled, but because something had shifted inside the mansion. Inside Hearts. Jalen stood at the window, holding a photo Claire had given him the night before. A baby, wrapped in a green blanket, his eyes wide with innocence. On the back, in soft cursive, Jalen, 3 months old. Mommy loves you. For so long, he had wondered where he came from. Why no one had come for him. But now he finally had a name that meant something. Jalen Delaney. Claire was in the study again when her assistant entered, hesitant. There's a woman here to see you, says she knows you. She brought this. She handed Claire a worn, faded envelope. Claire opened it and froze. Inside was a letter. One she had written 15 years ago. To the social worker who promised to keep her baby safe. She looked up, heart pounding. Send her in. The woman walked in slowly, thin, with sunken cheeks, but eyes that shimmered with tears as they landed on Claire. "You're alive," Claire whispered. "And so is he," the woman said, voice breaking. "I never knew. They told me he died. But I saw the news. I saw him. Claire, I never stopped looking." Claire's breath caught. "Marie?" Marie nodded. "I was the nurse at the shelter. The one assigned to your baby after the fire. I tried to protect him, but then Richard's people came. Said there was an adoption. Said it was handled. I asked questions and they fired me." She looked down, ashamed. "I was scared. I didn't have power, but I should have done more. I'm so sorry." Claire's hands trembled as she took Marie's. "You did what you could. You tried to protect him. That's more than most." A tear slid down Marie's cheek. "Can I see him? Just once?" Jalen was sitting in the sunroom, reading, when Claire entered with the woman beside her. He looked up and smiled. But then his eyes locked onto Marie's. Something in him stilled. Familiarity, like a whisper from his soul. "I know you," he said slowly. "You were in my dream once. You were holding me. You were crying." Marie knelt in front of him, hands covering her mouth as sobs broke free. I did hold you. I tried to keep you warm. I told you stories when no one came for you. I prayed you'd be safe." Jalen's eyes welled with tears. "You were the only one who ever sang to me. I remembered your voice." Claire stood at the doorway, watching the moment unfold, wounds healing across time. Days passed. Life slowly found its rhythm again in the Delaney estate. Claire and Jonathan filed for full guardianship of Jalen, and soon after, Claire began the legal process to restore his identity as their son. But something else was happening too. The story of the homeless boy who saved a pregnant woman had gone viral. People all over the world wanted to know more. Donations poured into the shelter Jalen once slept in. Schools offered him scholarships. Newspapers called him a hero. And yet, Jalen stayed humble. "I'm not a hero," he said during an interview. "I just did what I hoped someone would have done for me." Jonathan found himself watching Jalen from afar sometimes, how the boy walked with quiet grace, how he hugged the housekeepers, how he treated everyone with kindness. "He reminds me of you," Jonathan said to Claire one evening. Soft but strong. Claire smiled. "He's better than us both." They sat in silence for a while before Jonathan added, "I'd like to officially adopt him too. Not just as yours, but ours." Claire looked at him, eyes shining. "He already sees you as his father." 1 month later, a private ceremony was held in the mansion's garden. Close friends, trusted staff, and a few others gathered as Claire, Jonathan, and Jalen stood together. Judge Reynolds looked at the boy with a warm smile. "Jalen, do you understand what this means?" Jalen nodded, holding both Claire and Jonathan's hands. "It means I finally belong." The judge's voice softened. "Then, by the power vested in me, I hereby grant the legal adoption of Jalen Delaney." Applause echoed across the garden. But more than that, it was the sound of a heart finally coming home. Later that evening, Jalen walked out to the front steps alone, looking up at the stars. He didn't feel small under them anymore. He felt seen. Claire joined him. "Whatcha thinking about?" she asked gently. "Just how one moment can change everything," he said. Claire nodded. "That night, in the rain, I thought I was the one saving you. But you saved me too, Jalen." He looked at her, then down at her now smaller baby bump. "Do you think my little brother or sister will like me?" Claire smiled and hugged him tight. "They'll love you. How could they not?" As the night grew quiet, Jalen whispered a silent prayer. Not one of asking, but one of thanks. Thanks for the woman who never stopped believing. Thanks for the man who became the father he never had. Thanks for the stranger who once sang to him in the dark. And most of all, thanks for a second chance at life. In the corner of the garden, a stone bench now stood with an inscription. To the boy who reminded the world that kindness can change everything. And beneath it, one final line. Jalen Delaney, the boy who came home. From the cold streets to a warm family, From lost to found, Jalen's story is a powerful reminder that one act of kindness can ripple through the world in unimaginable ways. Would you stop for someone in need? Because sometimes the life you change might be your own. If this story touched your heart, leave a yes in the comments. Share it, like it, and let kindness lead your way.